Hi, I'm Kelly Vaughn, and this is Inside Indy. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about the mass shootings that have occurred in our country. When you think back to the one in Vegas, when you think about the one that happened in Texas, in the church there near San Antonio, Texas. Tragic, scary, and so we want to talk about the shootings in general and also those that happen at a church, which is just unbelievable, totally unexpected. And I'm sure a lot of you out there have feelings about that, you have concerns about that, and we have a couple of ministers in the studio with us today to talk about the issue and to perhaps give us some hope and to make us feel more safe. Joining us are Pastor Jeffrey Pitts Jr., and he is senior pastor of the Upper Room Church of Indianapolis. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming in again to see us. And we also have the Reverend Rob Havermail of New Beginnings, AG, which stands for
Assembly of God.
Assemblies of God, and founder of Mission 2819. Welcome to Inside
Thanks
Indy.
for having us again.
Thank you for coming on board. Wow, 26 people were killed, 20 wounded in Texas after a gunman dressed in tactical gear opened fire at a church outside Antonio, Texas. It's the deadliest church shooting in modern U.S. history. It was not linked to a terrorist group, which begs the question, though, is it still terrorism? What were your thoughts? I'd like to hear from each of you when you first heard about the shootings on national television.
Well, I was just kind of saddened. You know, a lot of people say, I can't believe this happened at a church.
Yeah.
And I can believe it does happen at a church because as we come closer to the end times, more and more of this is going to be prevalent of people wanting to attack. And my thought is, how is my church safe from this happening? And, you know, just really praying for the people that were killed and just looking at the whole situation and saying, if this was to happen at our church or in our community, because of the community, our churches are 3 miles apart.
Right.
How do we work together and how do we get our church people prepared for a situation like that?
What were your thoughts when you first heard the news?
When I first heard it, I immediately went to, my spirit went to, we literally are living in the last days. That these are perilous times. These are violent times. Was I shocked? No. It is an absolute tragedy, especially when you see that most of the victims who were shot and killed were children. When you see that, I mean, this was an act. My phone has been ringing off the hook. A lot of people have been asking me, what was this? What was behind this? Of course, we believe, that this was, you don't have to be part of some organization to call it a terrorist attack. Right. I mean, I'm looking at it like it's spiritual. There's mental illness there. They said that the man had a history of, I believe he was in the
Air Force.
The Air Force. He was in the Air Force. So he had a lot of stuff on the inside of him going on that needed to be taken care of. And, it's the influence that he was under, and I think that churches, they asked me the other day, they're asking us, should churches carry? Should people in the church have guns? What happens if an active shooter comes in? Does the church know what to do in a time like that? Right. And Pastor Rob was talking about that. I think that churches need to be trained in the area in what to do if a shooter does come in the church.
Now, and I want to get into details about what churches might be doing to protect themselves, but it goes back to that question. I think when we're watching television and we're seeing this unfold before our eyes, and especially people who know and love God, they go, how could you not protect them? How could you would think the safest place to be is in the church or in the church building, because we know the church is really the people, not the building. But we feel that at that time, God's presence is there with us, especially when we're in church. And I think a lot of people feel, why didn't he protect them? So it really is and I know we're going to get into the earthly solutions and remedies, but it's also a spiritual question. And I think that's where people feel, and even I've heard on Facebook people saying, I'm scared to go to church, and we certainly don't want people doing that. But that's the way people are like, if I'm not safe in church,
absolutely,
where can I be safe?
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, it's it's really hard to kind of wrap your head around that. I mean, here you got a trained killer who was in the military that somehow snapped. You know, there's different things, whether it's, you know, what his mother-in-law or something was in there, reasons for what he did. Are we safe in church? And why would that happen? It's because God is a God of choice. And this guy made a choice. It doesn't mean that God sent him in there because those people weren't real believers. It's not because he sent them in there because he wanted to send a message. He's a God of choice. He allows us to make choices, whether we shoot people, whether we steal, whether we have adulterous thoughts, whether we you know, do different things. We are characters of choice. How do we look at this? We look at this as how do we draw nearer to God? And what or who ran across this guy that can go, man, if I would have just taken a moment and loved on him, could this have been any different?
Wow.
The other thing is you're dealing with mental illness. You know, what is the undiagnosed mental illness that he has? What was his treatment plan? What did they put in place? You know, who did they put around him to be able to assist him to do something better? But also, whatever the mental illness is, I'm not sure exactly what he was diagnosed with. Let's say it's schizophrenia. He's been in the service. He's a trained killer. If he thinks people are after him, he has an issue with his mother-in-law, he's naturally going to go there and take everybody out so they're not a threat to him. And that's what like a paranoid schizophrenic would think is everybody's against me. I got to protect myself.
Okay. You want to add to that, Pastor Pitts?
Yeah, you know, like, and we look at it with just schools, I mean, or forgive me, churches, and then we don't talk about, what about the schools? What about malls? What about different places? Like these people were in there in service, worshiping God. A man runs in and starts shooting, and people ask, how come God didn't protect these people? How in the house of God, God should have smoked this man and killed him dead, and this, and this. God, I can't tell you exactly why that happened. Well, of course, we know he is the God of choice, mental illness. Can I exactly say why God allowed that to happen? No, but I can tell you this, that God is sovereign. And whatever his plan is his plan. And as fact as this man, you know, ran in, did God, you know, like Pastor was saying, did God say, these people are in sin, go in there and kill them? I don't believe that God is a murderer.
No.
And I don't believe that God whispered in this man's ear and told this man to go and take all these people's lives. But it just shows us the type of world that we're living in.
I think that's key.
And we in America, see, America has not really had persecution as far as their faith.
Preach. You tell me you come preach today.
We think
According to the Middle East,
Right.
persecution.
Right.
It's not even close.
doesn't even compare to what goes on in the Middle East, in China.
Right, correct.
And here, we are a get what you want society, and we think, okay, yeah, this was horrible. This was absolutely tragic. But do people know what to do? And how do we pray? How do we come together? What happens after a tragedy is what we need to focus on as well. Because we see stuff like this happen and we're just kind of like, oh, people just go on with their lives. But what happens if real persecution comes up against the churches in America? We're not going to know how to act.
That's a whole nother show. Wow.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So,
wow.
That's a great point.
Some good responses. You know, what I think about is in the Bible, the beheading of John the Baptist, that, you know, considering he was a relative, right, of Jesus's, and then he wasn't protected. And that kind of told me from the beginning that, it's like, as you say, we're living in the world, we're not in the garden. And so stuff happens in the world, and so it comes at us at different directions, and he is with us, but we also are, because of our sinful nature, are just a part of that. Stuff happens here. So, but I know a lot of people feel that way, that why weren't they protected? And people, which is kind of like a false sense of security, that people are going into church thinking that they're safe there. So what measures have, if any, that you have taken personally over your congregations in light of this? Did it cause you to do something different?
Well, for us, we've already started some security things in our church. We've kind of shut down the whole children's area. We have people working there. Nobody can go to the bathrooms or go back there. We have different sets of ushers, so they welcome them when they come in. There's another set, and then there's a head usher that's watching over the worship center. We are attending a active shooter class December 7th down at Mount Pleasant Baptist Church down on the southwest side that the Southwest District's putting on, just so we can get more information. We've also taken some security classes by a guy that I was in ordination class with, who was an undercover cop for IMPD. So we have gleaned some information, coming up with some policies and procedures of how do we make our church safe. So we've already started the process.
Even before the shootings?
Even before the shootings. So we just want to continue to work on that. We have, like I said, policies and procedures that we're kind of working through and then training all of our people of what to do.
Okay. You mentioned the Southwest District is an IMPD?
Yes.
Okay, so they're offering that, the active shooter class?
It's December 7th at Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. I believe it's on Man Road, and it starts at 6.
Wow, okay.
On December 7th.
So they are being proactive as a result of this? Are they reaching out to the ministries? I'm curious as to what
that was set up prior to.
Really?
Uh-huh. Yes, they've done, I think this is their 4th one this year that they've done.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a break. And then when we come back, we want to hear from Pastor Pitts about what you and your church are doing in terms of security measures, defending itself, and what the reaction has been so far from church members about what happened.
Absolutely.
Okay, when we come back. And we're back, and we're continuing our discussion here on Inside Indy about how to protect yourself at church and how churches are working to protect you. And we're talking to Pastor Jeffrey Pitts of the Upper Room Church in Indianapolis, and you were going to tell us what your church specifically is doing in light of the shootings in Texas, but you probably were starting some things prior to that?
Oh, absolutely. We see in Indianapolis, there's a place called Mars Hill, and in Mars Hill is where our church is, like in the center of it, on off of like Farnsworth and McClure. Okay. And what we've been doing is, see, when you come into our sanctuary, when you walk through the door, immediately as you walk in the back of the sanctuary, we have people that are certified, that have their license, that are trained, that carry guns, like our security. In the middle, we have people, someone who watches, and then in the up in the pulpit, we have guns.
Wow.
And we do that because if someone was to come in, or if someone already came in, because see, let's think about that. What if the person just didn't walk in the church and start shooting, but the person came in and waited 20 minutes,
right,
and then started shooting? So we have a plan like to protect ourselves. We want to protect the congregation. We want to protect the children. Now, you were talking about the police officers. Mm-hmm. Like, I truly believe that it would be good to have a IMPD police officer sit out in front of every church. Just, or whatever.
Like they do Walmart, huh?
Yeah, like they do Walmart. Absolutely. Because think about this, like what if, I even heard somebody the other day talking about they need to get metal detectors.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you that. What about checking for guns coming in?
At the door.
That's what came to my mind.
Mind blown, isn't it? That what we got to do, it's like going to the club.
That's crazy.
Right.
Like you got to walk through a metal detector before you can get into the church. I said, Lord have mercy. So I think that people do need to be trained up in what to do if there is an active shooter, because what's the two things that we were just talking about? What's the two things that you think about doing as soon as someone runs into the church and starts shooting? You're either going to duck, you're going to lay down, or you're going to run. Mm-hmm. But what happens if you're all the way in front of the church, because if something like that happens immediately, you're gonna go directly in shock.
Right.
That's why you have to have people in the church that are prepared for that.
Okay.
Because you're in worship and you're on the Lord and you're thinking about God, and all of a sudden you hear pop, pop, pop. There needs to be people in there that know what to do, who are trained in that, who have licenses to carry, who are there to help protect the church. And we have that. And we're in Mars Hill, so we definitely have that.
So, and when you say that, what's that mean? Why? And you have a few interesting instances of what happens sometimes.
Well, let's look at the church in Texas.
Okay.
Where was that located? In a nice rural area.
Right.
Nice area. It was wonderful. I mean, countryside, whatever. Go to the inner city. You know what I mean? So if we're looking at it like, have guns just in the inner city. What about Texas? What about the little Baptist church out there in the middle of Rushville, Indiana, next to a cornfield? But we've had times where people have come in, they're intoxicated, they're on heroin, God bless them. We don't know if they're packing.
Because we pray for those people to come in.
Absolutely. And we love the people that come in.
That's the whole point.
We love on them. But at the same time, in these days, now people are starting to think, what's your motive? Why are you here? What are you here to get help, or are you here to plot on the church? I mean, it's got people in a disarray.
So have members come to you and said, I'm concerned? Have you heard anything, Rob?
Not really. We have quite a few people also in our church that carry guns that they feel comfortable because we have people that they believe that would protect us.
Does the pastor pack?
No comment.
I ain't gonna say nothing. I ain't got nothing to say about
Pistol
that.
packing pastor.
The packing pastor. I see it. There's a movie waiting to happen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some other things that we can also do. We have a police chief from Southport, Tom Vaughn. He's coming to assess our church and our risk ability. So what that means is he's going to come in and walk around and ask us some questions and look at our church and see what are the access points. So like in your church, how many doors do you have open that somebody can come in? What we've done is we've limited that already before he's come to one access point. You can only come in one. You can go out all of them, but you can only come in one door. But he's going to assess it for us and give us a risk analysis to tell us what he thinks a criminal could come in and do. With a criminal background, I kind of have that criminal thinking that I'm able to kind of pre-think what a criminal might think. So that gives me a little bit of an edge. It gives JP a little bit of an edge to understand that mindset.
And when you say criminal background, do you mean in terms of justice, or that?
No.
Your past?
Our past.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So you know the game.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And we can spot, like, it's like God gives us discernment.
Right.
But people who grow up on the streets, they have a lot of discernment. And I wouldn't just say paranoia, but because you get around certain people who you got to always watch. I can feel something's not right. Like, and when you're in the church, that's why it's good for discernment. And it's not like always looking at people like, oh, what's wrong with him? We have enough of that in the church.
Right.
But when it comes to something here's not right, I'm just going to keep an eye on him. We need people, the deacons, the ushers, the elders, the security team that will be able to do that.
Okay. I guess when you talked about discernment, and I think it's interesting how, and you mentioned the word naive, I think some of that is going on in terms of people have not taken precautions because they are naive, because I live in a rural area. And the first thing they kept saying on all the national reports was, this was a town where everybody knew everybody. But I'm trying to figure out, where in the scriptures did it say that, all have fallen short of God except those that live out in the rural area. In the rural area.
Right.
It doesn't say that.
Right.
So why this? But it's like people keep moving out, looking for this, paradise. Even in the area that I live on the far northwest side, I see people jogging at night like, oh, it's safe here. No, it ain't. Yeah. No, he could be your neighbor. He could be the guy down.
Absolutely.
What are you talking? And I grew up in the inner city.
Yeah.
So, and I know that game too, but I don't necessarily think like, oh, because I'm here, or that I'm here in Noblesville, everything is safe. No.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's absolutely everywhere. I mean, and it, you know, we go to these nice churches, and we look for the best, the biggest church, and the nicest place to make us feel good.
Right.
When really, you know, we're living in a time where it's sad, but you have to be on guard. I mean, you can't just, everybody thinks that following Jesus is tiptoeing through the tulips. You're baptized in lemon juice. Everything's going to be okay. You know, like, whether we want to believe it or not, there is a worldwide attack on Christianity.
Yes.
And people are still hiding. And they're not wanting to come out and do anything about it. When something pops off, they don't want to make a big deal about it and say, well, listen, they got shot, let's say a prayer for them. But what happens if that's your children in the church? How far would you take it? How far are you willing to go to protect your ministry?
Right.
That's what we try to teach. Like, we have people come in all the time, and people want to give them money, give them this, give them that. Because as a believer, you're a trained giver. You're trained to love on people, to give on people. So it makes the church an easy prey for a criminal, because people are set up to do that. So what we want to do is we want to constantly love on people as soon as they walk on the door. As soon as they walk in the door, and then we have a couple, myself and another pastor, that are welcoming people. I'm checking them out, and I'm the pastor. I'm checking them out. Is there any issues that's going to be concerning for our church? So our senior pastor on Sunday mornings can focus on what he needs to focus on. But I think that's the issue, is you're going to see a lot of it because we're training people to love on people, to give to people. But the thing I think that the church is missing is discernment. And not only active shooting, there's lots of robberies at churches.
Absolutely.
Because they know exactly what day they're going to count the money, what day they're going to go take it because they're looking for the cash on hand. So I think that's another avenue that churches are also going to have to look at, is to make sure whoever is counting and whoever is depositing, what is the plan for them? Because that's a real easy access for criminals as well.
Okay, well, let's close a couple of quick comments with your advice to people who want to go to church in terms of security.
My advice is that the world's always been crazy. Don't allow fear to stop you from worshiping God. If you want to go to church, come to church. I don't think, you know, and I got to be honest with you, the world's not going to get better. So I think that right now, more than ever, we need to go to church.
Okay. Pastor Rob?
I'm going to speak really to the pastors to make sure that you sit down with your pastoral staff and that you have a sound policy and procedure in place for your church and the safety of your church. Not only for people that are outside, but people that are inside. Are you doing background checks? Because that could eliminate a lot of people that are doing ministry. If you do background checks with, like, a friend of mine that does it through Safe Hiring Solutions, Mike McCarty. He does them throughout the country. But also active shooter, and train your people. Where is the access points if something happens? Where do I get out of the building? We did a survey, and over 88% of the people don't know how to get out of their church.
Wow.
86% of the people have not had an opportunity for active shooter class.
Okay.
So I would suggest that to the pastors,
Okay.
of making sure that you make sure that your
Kind of like
church
trying to
is
get off
safe.
an airplane. So here are the exits. So get the little lady up in the front to do that, the guy. All right. Well, appreciate you both coming in and enlightening us. The Reverend Rob Havermel, thanks so much for joining us. And Pastor Jeffrey Pitts.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you. We'll have to do this again.
Thank you.
Most definitely.
All right. And thank you for joining us. I'm Kelly Vaughn. This has been Inside Indy. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.